New beginnings are inevitable. Things change whether we like it or not. For the 20 years I've been on this earth, I've grown accustomed to the many changes that life has thrown my way. One of the hardest that I've experienced thus far was when my grandma gained her angel wings. February 17th, 2022 was the day my grandma lost her battle to lung failure. I remember this nightmare so vividly. Shortly before her passing, my family and I were planning to visit my grandparents' home in Delaware. This would have been our second visit, but as a family. My grandma had a history of asthma attacks. Growing up, I remember her taking numerous trips to the ER because of it. Her attacks were so frequent that at a young age, I learned how to operate the asthma machine and prepare her medicine for her treatments. February 15th was the day of our last conversation. Now, if you knew my grandma, you'd know how overprotective she was of her babies. That night, I had just finished getting my hair braided. On my way home, she stayed on the phone to make sure I made it from point A to point B safely. I told her that I'll be fine, but of course she insisted on staying on the phone anyway. I remember trying to postpone our conversation for the next day because I was just too exhausted. Had I known that would have been our last conversation, I would have fought my sleep to stay up with her. The next morning, at the crack of dawn, I woke up to my aunt bawling her eyes out and my mother hyperventilating, just trying to get her words out. All I remember hearing was, "Mommy's in the hospital, come on, get dressed." I was hoping my ears were deceiving me. Once we received the news, my mother drove us down to Delaware expeditiously. I remember waking up in Delaware at the hospital she was admitted to. Delaware was no longer vibrant and peaceful as I remembered it to be. All I remember was excessive fog and gray. The hospital only allowed 2 visitors at a time. Therefore, my mother and my aunt went in to see my grandmother, while my grandfather took the rest of us to his home. Normally, my grandfather's conversations would consist of good things. This time, he said nothing I wanted to hear. He kept saying he didn't think she was going to come back. He informed us that when he found my grandmother on the floor of their home, she had already lost oxygen in her brain, and that my grandmother was pronounced brain dead by the time she arrived. Who would have known that our second family visit to my grandparents' house would have been this? Entering her home, knowing that she touched everything in there, seeing that she was in the process of furnishing everything to our comfort hurt on a different level. That next morning, I remember laying on her bedside under the crochet blanket she was working on. My brothers bursted into the room sobbing to me. I rarely see my eldest brother show emotion. Seeing him upset was when I knew instantly that they had no good news to share. My grandmother went into cardiac arrest and was pronounced deceased. At that very moment, I was forced to take on this massive change in my life. The day of my grandmother's funeral was like a fever dream to me. Seeing her in the casket was surreal. I remember thinking, that wasn't my grandmother. Previous funerals that I've attended were of elders who lived a full life, but her funeral just didn't seem right. I kept having internal battles trying to convince myself that this wasn't real. Seeing everyone wear her favorite color purple was when I realized I'm never going to see her again. I miss our daily check-ins, making her tea with lemons whenever she was under the weather, the random, "Hey Kimmy," whenever she needed a favor, her infamous sweet potato pies every Thanksgiving, our weekend Macy's trips after her hair appointments, even our arguments. I miss it all. She may not be here with me in flesh, but she appears frequently in my dreams. Her spirit is so strong that I still feel her words and guidance at my lowest points. Whenever I see purple at the randomest times, I believe that that's her reassuring me that she's still by my side. I have my moments where I blame myself for not coming down to Delaware sooner. I believe that as crazy as I may sound, I could have saved her life and she'd still be here with me today. Her passing has changed my entire perspective of life. It taught me the importance of cherishing every moment, to expect the unexpected, and the true value of saying I love you as many times as you can, because tomorrow is never promised. With the 17 years I was fortunate to spend with her, I can honestly say that I am truly blessed and highly favored to have experienced such a loving soul like hers. My grandmother had a heart of gold. I'm not saying she was an angel, but she was for sure a diamond in the rough. No love could ever amount to hers. If you experienced her love, you were lucky. All of my friends would constantly reassure me of how lucky I am to have been in her life. I truly do think her traits are distilled in me forever. I love you, Grandma, immensely, forever and always.